We have such a special treat for our listeners today.
Yes.
Um,
We're talking
it's not,
to,
we're talking to Don Hanson from Green Acres Kennel Shop out of Bangor, Maine.
you're
And
like, who's Don Hanson?
well, that's what's so cool about it. So this guy's been in business as long as we have. Like we were both pioneers on different ends of the United States.
Yep.
But he is a really cool guy, very, very educated, accomplished trainer, and he is a major advocate for positive training. And I just cannot wait for us to talk to him.
Super, super respected in the
Very highly respected
in the dog world, in the
dog
training world. And
yes.
like he is like, I don't have anybody to compare him to.
I don't either. He's a one of a kind.
When you said that you were reaching out to talk to different people and I saw his name and I knew who he was.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started looking at his bio and his credentials and I'm like,
Whoa.
he's talking to us?
Yeah.
Yeah. So really cool.
Yeah.
Great. I'm excited.
So let's get the show on the road, shall we?
Okay, let's go.
Okay, let's go.
Come on.
We're very excited to have Don Hanson from the Green Acres Kennel Shop with us today. He is out of Bangor, Maine. Is that correct?
That is
Yep.
correct.
Awesome. Well, we are really happy to have you. We go way back, Don and I, back to, so there are pet care industries, or there is a pet care industry association.
Yep.
Right now it's called the IBPSA. And prior to that, it was called PCSA, which stood for Pet Care Services Association. And before
Well,
that,
even prior to that, it was the ABKA.
ABKA. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
And that's how I know you, because I used to be on the ABKA Yahoo group and you were the moderator. Does that sound right?
No,
Really?
no. I had a Kennel L group that I
was
started.
It. That was it. The Kennel
Yeah,
L group.
that was kind of an independent group, and I was the moderator of that.
Okay.
And I had discovered it when my wife and I were deciding maybe this was a business we wanted to get into,
Mhm.
and started that group. And I don't think we had been at Green Acres even a couple of months, and he said, you know, I started this group because I was interested in the business. I'm not, so I'm going to end it unless you want to take it over. And I said, yeah, why not? And so, yeah, and that group was around for many, many years until, I mean, it kind of slowly just petered away with social media and Facebook and a lot of these other things. People found different ways to connect.
Okay.
But yeah, that's where we first met, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So it was a Yahoo group. I just was wrong about which Yahoo group.
Way back in the day.
But yeah, so we both became business owners in the same year. You bought Green Acres, I'm
95.
guessing with your wife in 95?
What prompted that? Weren't you in medical sales or you?
I was in the medical device industry, was never in sales, but worked in marketing, product development, regulatory affairs, quality assurance.
Mm-hmm.
Spent 17 years doing that and was getting really, really burnt out. I was tired of, 6-day weeks and my boss calling at 2 a.m. in the morning with another good idea.
Yeah, yeah.
And my wife and I, my wife was a vet tech,
Mm-hmm.
and we had volunteered for the Madison Audubon Society to serve on their board of directors. And the responsibility we were assigned was managing their nature store, which sold basically books and bird feeders and shirts and stuff like that to members.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that for 2 years and loved it. And we thought, maybe we should find something we could do together as a business, and it would be an exit out for me. And so we were living in Wisconsin, where we were born and raised, and really planned on doing what we're doing at Green Acres there, and spent probably at least 18 months looking for land. We found 85 acres out in the middle of the country.
Wow.
Put in an offer to buy contingent on zoning, started talking to the town about what they would want and what our intentions were. And they gave us all of this, oh, yes, we want you to do this. And we're so excited about it. And, but you'll need to have these surveys done and some conceptual drawings of what it'll look like. So we started spending money doing all of that and got to our very first zoning hearing. And they started the hearing with, well, we'd really love you and your wife to build your home here, but we don't want your business. We don't want all these barking dogs out in the country.
That's a no.
And it's like, you couldn't have told me before we spent all this money.
Right. And time.
Yeah. And so at that point, we realized we would need to be moving far upfield because we had to start at the town level, and then county zoning regs would have come into play. But, we just thought, okay, this is going to be a real obstacle. And so started looking for an existing business to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked at businesses from afar. Now, back then you couldn't go online. Well, you could, but there weren't pictures. Spent a lot of faxes going back and forth. We looked at businesses in Michigan, Vermont, Tennessee, and Maine. And we liked the financials of the business in Maine the best, because a lot of the kennels that were for sale were kind of like hobby kennels with a really expensive house that was going to be the bulk of the mortgage payment and not enough business income coming in to even begin to make the mortgage payments.
Mm-hmm.
We learned that really quick. And we liked this business, but what was really weird is the year before, so in 1994 in July, we came out to Maine to go on vacation because back then, when I had copious free time, I dabbled in outdoor and wildlife photography.
Okay.
And we have moose in the upper peninsula of Michigan, which is just right above Wisconsin. So for about, 3 or 4 summers in a row, we'd go up there for a week trying to track down moose.
Nice.
And we never found any. And I think my wife is getting tired of being the tripod bearer and such. And she said, this summer we can go to Glacier National Park, which I know it's a sure thing, or we can go to Maine. You get to pick, but we're not going to the UP again, just not happening.
Yeah.
So we came out here, spent 2 weeks, had a glorious time. I photographed, probably 30 moose.
Wow.
6 in the first 2 hours.
Nice.
If you know where to go and hire a guide, it's really, really easy. And we loved it. And we said, after we do this doggy business thing we're talking about, this would be a great place to retire to. And literally less than 18 months later, we were living here.
Oh my gosh.
That is a great
So Green Acres, was it always a kennel from the very beginning, or did you add that?
It had 2 previous owners, and it started off as a Yorkie breeding kennel and a grooming shop where the groomer also made a lot of shampoos, a lot of her own shampoos and products and things like that.
Nice.
They eventually expanded it into some retail as well. Then the second owners came along. They did some additional building. They built on an additional kennel building, and they rebuilt the store. I don't know if the store was actually a smaller version or if they just connected the buildings with the store.
Mm-hmm.
And then so they did a little bit of training basically through the summer months, and had really kind of given up on retail. This is when the big box stores were really making their first push. And we came back in with the idea we were going to really build that, really expand on training, and keep doing the boarding and daycare, which, daycare's expanded a great deal for us, and expand the grooming. And we've been able to do that a lot over the past 25 years. As I'm sure you guys are aware, the business has changed a lot.
Yeah, that was one of my questions for you. We've seen like a huge change in just how people think of their animals. There's been this like real humanization, and a lot more dogs are have become children for a lot of like our
Mhm.
customers. And
Yeah.
the kennel was a bad word back in the 90s and
Yeah.
80s and 70s. And, but it basically was just dog storage here in Austin. And now, there's people that are buying sous vide, raw dog, or not
Sous vide dog
or,
food.
or raw dog food, or, they're spending crazy money on food for dogs and grooming for dogs and training for dogs. And there wasn't really an industry that you could think that you could make a living or, do anything. So I'm sure you've seen that as we have.
Oh, definitely. I mean, people are willing to spend more money, get more invested in learning about their pets and what's important to them, and just the overall level of care has increased dramatically, and that's been a very rewarding part of it for us to see the industry change. Don't get me wrong, I think we've got a long ways to go on some things like shock collars and things that. But
I love your pen and your wall thing with the no shock collars. We've been big proponents. I used to buy choke chains and pinch collars off of people when they would come in. I would just say, I'll
give you a discount on a new collar.
Yeah, I was like, I'll buy that from you and I'll throw it away. I actually made a curtain out of all the choke chains and pinch collars that I had. I have like this outdoor window in my fence, and so it's sort of a curtain, and it's sort
rusty
of a
chain link curtain.
It looks kind of,
or not chain link, but choke chain curtain. Yeah, people are like, "What is that?" I'm like, "That's from when we first started."
I was interested to know how you got going down the no shock collar road, and I noticed there was a lot of letters behind your name.
Lots of credentials
you
related
are very,
to training.
Yeah, you are quite an accomplished trainer, and I know you've served on a lot of boards. I've heard your name around the APDT. I've been a member since
somewhere in the 90s.
Yeah, somewhere in the. I didn't go to the first conference, but I think I went to the second conference. I think it was the second one. The one in, I think, was it Chicago? I don't know. Anyways.
It's been so long now.
How did you get into positive dog training and tell us about that journey?
Your passion for force-free.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back and talk about my very first dog training class as a client.
Sure.
So Paula and I had got our first puppy ever as a couple. We had both, when we got married, had older dogs, but we got our first puppy together as a little Cairn Terrier. And we decided to take him to a puppy kindergarten class and show up the very first night. And one of the very first things the instructor asked me to do was ask Gus to sit. And I said, I'm happy to do that, but he doesn't know how to do that. That's why I'm here. She says, well, just command him to sit. And so I did, and he didn't do anything. And she said, your dog's being dominant. You have to show him you're the alpha, and you have to do an alpha wolf rollover. Now, we had read the book by the monks of Newskeet because we didn't know any better. And so I proceeded to do that. And Gus is thrashing around at the floor, afraid for his life. I didn't realize that at the time, and just gnashing at his teeth. And she looks at me and says in her best Barbara Woodhouse voice, you've got to grab that muzzle and clamp it shut.
Oof.
And a little part inside of me said, this is really, really stupid. This is really, really stupid. And attempted to do that right in the palm of my hand. Teeth, I let go. I was bleeding profusely.
Oh my gosh.
This lady trainer looked at me in total disgust, and they went to get me some ice for my hand, and I handed the leash to Paula. And Gus and I wanted little or anything to do with each other for many, many weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We finally got over that, and we were lucky in our community. Are you familiar with Dr. Trish McConnell?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Patty Mac.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Trish ran a dog training school in our community. And we eventually started doing classes there, positive reinforcement based, and really, really liked it. And it really got me very, very interested in training to begin with. And that was about the same time we were starting to wonder what kind of business we would want to get into. And we talked to Trish with our idea, and she says, well, no, there's not enough good kennels in the area. I think it would be a great thing to do. And that kind of kicked off of our interest. Mm-hmm. And I came from an industry where being a member of a professional association is just what you did.
Right.
You know, it was very, very important. So, you know, we had joined the ABKA before we even started looking. I joined I think I heard about the APDT within a month after we bought the business. And I joined and started going to their message board, where I had a lot of people helping me out, and went to my first conference was in 1998 in Valley Forge. Was the first conference I went to. And a lot of us were planning to meet for the very first time online. And one of the things we were all shocked over, no pun intended, but we had heard that there was going to be a company at the trade show demonstrating shock collars.
Was it Tritronics?
Pardon?
Was it Tritronics?
I think so, but I don't. There was a guy who had gotten elected to the APDT board who was very much in bed with them, and that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided we were going to have our own little protest, and that was at the time when people who affectionately called those of us in the camp I'm in treat slinging weenies. Right. So we had these great T-shirts made. I still have mine somewhere, and it's got a picture of a hot dog flinging treats. And we showed up in there and were, you know, actively expressing our displeasure that should even be considered.
Good for you.
And shortly after that, I got this phone call from Ian Dunbar one night, and Paula says, yeah, there's some guy named Ian Dunbar that wants to talk to you. And I thought, okay, who's spoofing me? And so I go and I talked to him, and he recruited me to be on the APDT Education Committee, which was the group that developed what today we know as the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers, before we turned that over to them. And a couple years after that, a number of APDT folks had recruited me to run for the board. I ran for the board my first time. Over 12 years, I think it was, I served 9 years on the board, 2.5 as chair, 2 as vice chair, and kept trying to get APDT to establish a pain-free standard. And didn't try it my first meeting. I wasn't that naive, but I thought, I'm going to go for it by the second meeting. And my motion failed for lack of a second. I couldn't even get one other person willing to discuss it, which just surprised me. And I kept trying for that. And I ended up leaving APDT at the beginning of 2015, I think, because they did some things at the last minute, the board did, that I felt were not appropriate, and I couldn't support them in that, and gave them an ample opportunity to explain themselves. And at that time, I and many others chose to leave. And soon after, I found the Pet Professional Guild, and discovered, you know, they already had it. Now, they hadn't been around as long. They were only a couple years old at that time, but they had a what they call their guiding principles in place, which says that, you know, to be a member, you cannot use or recommend shock, prong, or choke collars or any aversives. And I said, man, why didn't I find you before?
Yeah, right. I'm your guy.
Yeah. And joined as a member and became somewhat involved, and then got, I don't remember if it was an email or a phone call from Nikki Tudge, and wanted to talk to me, and got recruited to be on the advocacy committee, which was working on developing the whole Shock-Free Coalition program. Eventually became co-chair of that committee, and then now chair of the Shock-Free Coalition, which is a separate organization, and work with Dan Antelek, who is the chair of the advocacy committee. And both of us then now also serve on the PPG steering committee. And so that's kind of the short story of how I got here. When I started, even when we started with Green Acres, the training program here was based on choke collars. And you know, that's what we started using, but I wasn't comfortable with it. Our kennel manager at the time, who had been doing all the training, wasn't totally comfortable either. And so we started making the transition away. And within a couple of years, we had stopped using them in classes, stopped selling them in the store, and started doing a buyback program like you were talking about. You know, every spring and summer, bring in your prongs or choke collars, and we'll give you a significant discount on a gentle leader, which has come out as the new alternative. And it worked really, really well. We were really getting our message across. And interesting, PPG has a program they developed called Project Trade, which basically sets members up to do exactly that. And Dan Antelek, the chair of our advocacy committee, has primarily just a training business, but he gets people turning in shock collars for credit to do classes with him. And he's had several. And so that's kind of how the whole transition happened. You know, we turned our program after I went to my first clicker training seminar. I just came back. I couldn't do it the other way anymore. And I'm fairly good about promoting things. So I went to that seminar. I sent out a press release, and our local newspaper bid on it, not only so much to send a reporter out, but to send a photographer out, and took a picture of Gus and I together and me talking about clicker training. And we didn't have any clicker classes going at the time. This, you know, I had just come back from the seminar. I thought, well, this was in late summer, early fall. And I thought, well, you know, we'll launch something next year. And bang, that article was in the paper with a photo about this big. Must have been a slow news day or something. And we started getting phone calls, and I'm going, oh no.
Better. I guess that's what I'm doing now.
Better develop.
So developed, we kept doing the other classes, and I developed 2 specific clicker classes as quickly as I could. And after teaching 2 classes that way, it was like, okay, I can never go back to the other way. And, you know, we may only do 2 classes a year because the market may just not be there. This is Bangor at the time, still is. I mean, it's more of a rural community than it is a urban area. Lots of old school attitudes about dogs. And I thought, you know, this is what I'm going to do. We'll have a few clients, but we're not going to have many. And it just exploded and has kept exploding since then. And it's been and I just keep looking at ways that we can continue to make it better. And the high number used to be 17 classes a week. And with COVID, we've had to rethink how we're doing things twice. And I counted the other day, and I think it's close to 25 or 26 classes a week we'll be starting in the next couple of weeks.
That's so.
How many trainers do you have?
I currently right now have 4 besides myself.
Yeah. Wow.
We're looking to add some more. two of them were full-time up until just a couple of weeks ago. One of them has been working here while she's a full-time student at the university and got a full-time laboratory technician job. So she's still working for us for training, but she's not full-time here. And the other two are part-time. One is a special ed teacher who is a former student. Most of my trainers have come from students that I saw talent in, and after they had gone through a couple of classes, I said, we need to talk. Yeah. And one of the others came to us for an aggression consult with a dog she had, and had been a student in our puppy class too. And she works part-time for us, and we just interviewed her for our podcast a couple I guess about a week ago. Okay. And she has founded a business called New England Science Dogs, and is training dogs for doing conservation projects.
Like how? What does that mean?
Like the project she's been working on now is teaching them to find wood turtles in the wild so they can do a census.
Wow, what a great use for a dog.
That
is so amazing.
She's done some work with, because we've got a lot of wind turbines up here, and there's been a lot of evidence of bird kills with that. And so she's doing some stuff on searching for dead birds. And then this time of year during hunting season, and she's been doing this for probably 5 years now, she's got two other dogs that help hunters find wounded game. So if they've got a deer, a moose, or a bear that they got a shot on, but it wasn't a killing shot, she will go out with one of her dogs at all hours of the night as a volunteer. She's not allowed legally to charge for this.
That's passionate.
To find those animals. She got charged and knocked over by a moose last year.
Oof. Lucky to be alive.
Lucky to be alive. It just happened. It was wounded. They didn't see it. They came around a corner, and one of her tracking dogs is a little wire-haired dachshund, and she just scooped him up and rolled, and so
wow.
Yeah, but really, really knowledgeable. She was went to school for wildlife ecology and doing conservation work, but had spent many years as a lab tech at Jackson Laboratory here in Maine, doing a lot of research, managing a lab, and now started working for us training dogs. And I think it got her thinking about, well, okay, is there a way I can have a full-time career training dogs? And so it's worked out really, really nice for her. I mean, one of the other things I really like about this profession is the number of employees we've had to see them go on and find their own passion in the industry in some niche. We've got two that have gone on to be veterinarians, couple that have gone on to be vet techs, two that went on to start their own business. These were two of my trainers. He was a graphic designer, and she had a PhD in engineering and was running a lab at the university, and they decided to start their own microbrewery.
Nice.
And it's like, okay, you guys you kind of did like I did, only much quicker. You transitioned away from the thing you were educated for and spent all that time in, and you just went, okay. I mean, literally, she had her PhD for 2 years, and she started working at the brewery too, and decided this is what we're going to do.
Wow.
That's
probably.
I said that I went middle-aged crazy at 27.
Yeah. I went from advertising to
right into working for minimum wage at a kennel.
Yep.
And we were newly engaged, and so
okay.
She was like, yikes.
I was like, wait, I told all my friends I was marrying an ad executive.
Yeah, nope. No, just a dog guy. But
yeah,
we understand it really is nice to have people that follow your passion. And we've had several people go into opening their own kennels. One of them's a director of the Humane Society down in Houston.
Yeah, about 12 businesses have spun off, either dog training businesses or pet care facilities or
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
dog walking services. It's been really fun. I think we're both in the same boat as far as just being kind of pioneers in the industry, since there's not a lot of people that have owned the businesses as long as we have, like you and us. The ones that
Well,
did before us have sold and, moved on.
I remember ABKA used to put out those industry statistics.
Yeah.
And I remember as we were thinking about getting into the business, looking at those, and the average length of time anyone remained in the business was 7 years.
Yeah. I remember that.
So yeah, we're kind of outliers.
We're dinosaurs in the industry.
They wouldn't let us be members because they
would let us be members. They just wouldn't let us be
certified.
So there was some kind of certification for pet care facility
because
operators.
We did group play. We started out of our house, and I didn't want to keep dogs in crates, my dad and I built 10 gravel runs, and we have 15 acres, and it just seemed like a waste of the dogs. And because of the kennel that I had worked at, I knew there were a lot of displacement behaviors that came from keeping dogs, pinned up basically, or dogs that were not used to that environment, having being scared of being in a kennel. And everything I wanted to do, my manager told me it wasn't my job. Basically pick up poop and give them food and water, and that's your job. So we did a place where I just thought dogs, if they had an outlet to be dogs, that those displacement behaviors would go away. And
they would be happier.
Yeah. So we started basically group play in our backyard, just as, I just saw that it could work. And I've had dogs literally my whole life. And I think I'm fairly intuitive it's hard to teach, but I could tell happy body language, and anyways, it worked, and it took off really well.
Yeah, we didn't know it at the time, but we were like one of the first people to actually do group play in Texas. So that was kind of fun to be able to look back and see that. But we were also, we're here to talk to Don.
No, I know. Well,
no, I think there's value in sharing back and forth. I think that's great too. But I mean, it's, that continues to be one of the things that we invest the most in our team in teaching them is body language and supervising play and how to do it. And one of the things that scares me is the number of people getting into this business with the idea they're going to start a daycare, run it for 2 years, and then sell it for buku bucks.
Right.
Yeah. Not in it for the right reasons. Yeah.
Anything really, really frightens me. Kate, who was our operations manager at the time, and I went to a conference in Baltimore it may be as many as 8 years ago now. And we just walked to it. It was after the last big financial crash.
2008.
Yep.
Okay. And there were lots of people there with had been given nice parachutes from corporate life, and they were there because they were going to start a daycare and sell it in 2 years and be billionaires. And it's like, oh, you have no clue.
Yeah.
And you start a conversation with them about dog play, and well, I've had 2 dogs in my life, and it's like, you have no clue.
I have no idea. Yeah, it was because of the market crash and everything. I think a lot of reports came out about how resilient the pet industry was, and that's why a lot of people were like, it's a good investment. And that's been my big fear too, is like there are a lot of people that, I mean, we've been approached by people that, they're like, hey, I want to open a kennel.
I've got some money.
It looks like you guys are doing great. This is a great idea. I'm like, well, what do you know about dogs? And he's nothing. How hard could it be?
I have a dog. That's what they say. I have one.
Yeah.
Like, oh, honey. Yeah. Or they
that's, and I've seen that happen a number of places, and it's just it's a little concerning because it doesn't reflect well back on the industry as a whole, and it puts us in the position of having the kennel being the
Yeah.
bad place
Right.
again. And even clients don't get what's appropriate in play a lot of times.
No,
And,
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure
you know,
they
it's
tell
one
you.
of the things.
They tell you, oh yeah, I bring
Pardon?
my dog to the dog park every day. And
Yeah.
you're like, please don't do that.
Yeah. Or he plays with my neighbor's dog all the time. She's
They
fine.
fence fight. They have so much fun. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh honey, no.
There's a retired police officer, probably 30 miles north of us, and he got into the business, and he's not shy about it. He's like, I just did it to make money. And he just hires contract trainers, and we were like, well, are they positive? And he said, I don't really care. You know, he goes, as long as I'm selling training.
Yeah, he's like, training is training. It's all the same,
He's
right?
like, it doesn't
and I was
matter.
just like, no, it's not.
Yeah. So do you find, not that people talk down to you, or we did an article about not needing choke chains or pinch collars, and it's been probably our most commented on blog that we wrote. And it's usually people that use choke chains and pinch collars, and they tell us how stupid we are and how there's always a place and need to use them.
Balance training saves lives, and
And
positive trainers just, give up on dogs and they just get euthanized when they don't, when they can't change their behavior.
So how do you deal with those kind of people?
Same way I do with behavior I don't like in a dog.
Me too.
I manage to prevent it or I ignore it.
Yeah. That's like,
and
respond.
I was a little more sensitive to it at first because we were the lightning rod. We were doing everything so differently.
Mm-hmm.
And very, very quickly, we developed a following that people wanted to do it our way. And over the time, I saw other businesses kind of softening and taking it. Now, the scary thing is in the past 5 or 6 years, we've seen some reversion back. There's a new wave of trainers coming in who are all about shock collars.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll tell someone with an 8-week-old puppy, this is what you need to teach your dog to behave.
Yeah, terrifying.
However, I get a lot of clients from them, but they don't realize that going into these places.
Yeah.
And then they hear what's happening and they leave very, very upset, and they end up back here and we can explain to them what we do. It's what's going on with the punishment-based trainers right now is an extinction burst.
Yep.
And it's not I was naive when I joined the APDT board in, what was it? I don't know, around 2000, 2001. I thought, okay, we can end this shock collar nonsense in a couple of years. I don't think that anymore. I'm going for the long term, but I'm hoping at least before the day whatever they do with whatever's left of me, I'm hoping we're at that point.
Yeah, we'll be fighting that.
I'd really like a grand Viking funeral, but I know those aren't legal anywhere anymore, so that's not going to happen. But
yeah, I noticed you have your no shock collars pin on, and you send all your employees through you have them all join the PPG, don't you?
Well, we pay for them to join the PPG, and we keep them as members as long as they're there. And so it's a criteria of employment is they have to agree to the PPG guiding principles. And so we have a group membership, and if we saw anybody who wasn't following those principles, that's assigned to us. We wouldn't want you as an employee anyway, because we have to demonstrate what we're all about. And so we do that. Most of 2 of my trainers are actually, I have one more trainer than I thought about. Okay. That's what happens when you get to my age. 2 of them are CPDTs, and one of them is preparing to sit for the next CPDT exam. And most of them, after they've been with me for a couple of years, if it looks like they're serious towards this, I really try to steer them that way. Some of them want to be an assistant. And if that's fine, if that's where their motivation lies, that can work as well too. But I do try to steer them towards sitting for the exam.
Yep.
And anybody new, the PPG has their own accreditation program for trainers and behavior consults. And as long as somebody's starting new, I'm really steering them towards that, because the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers, much like the APDT, still tolerates shock prongs and chokes. And so
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They are, and the IAABC, which is the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, still has they all have different things they call it. Some of them call it the Lima approach, least intrusive,
minimally aversive, I think.
Yeah.
Aversive, yeah. But I mean, it all comes down, you do this, this, and this, and no results, and you can use any of these nasty things. And to me, that's just not acceptable. And having been on the inside of some of those organizations, I know it's all about fear of losing members.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's some big money.
It's all about the money. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And to me, that's just not a reason to be that way. So PPG is the first place. If somebody asks me, hey, Don, I'm moving to Oregon, do you know anybody out there? And if I know somebody there, I might refer them to, but if I don't, I'm going to look on PPG's list and say, this is where to start, because at least I know these people are serious about not doing your dog any harm.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so passionate about PPG.
Yeah.
I can't do that with APDT. And I have tried with the what is it? The IBPSA?
IBPSA,
Yep.
Okay. They approached me a couple of years ago about coming to the conference, and I forget the name of the person who heads it up. And I says, this is the concern I have. Do you support this? And basically included the PPG's guiding principles. And didn't get an email back that said, no, I just never heard from them again.
Oh, that's unusual.
So, yeah, that to me was a, and I mean, ABKA certainly wasn't at that point either when they just unfortunately dissolved. And, but they did have some good things going for them, especially on the kennel side. But no, I'm really, really passionate about that. That's really, really important to me, which is why I put it up like on my screen here, why we include it on, okay. This, no, this I still can't do it.
Well, I will tell you that that Bart and I recently got re-involved in IBPSA, and they have invited us to speak at their conference this next month, or it's at the end of this month actually, and we're talking about positive training in our talk, but the people that are kind of in their regular repertoire of speakers are positive trainers or do talk about positive training. So
okay.
It is definitely moving in that direction. I haven't heard we went to the conference last year and I didn't hear a single person promoting. There was one person that owned a pet care facility who was talking about training, but clearly did not understand what she was talking about. But everybody else that I saw was just top notch. So,
well, that's good. That's good news to
on the
hear.
right road, which is great. Yeah.
Was one of the last ABKA conferences, which was in Lexington, Kentucky, maybe, maybe in Louisville. It was in Kentucky.
I went to Louisville. That was probably 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
Oh, it was longer than that if it was ABKA.
Oh, yeah.
No.
He's thinking of APDT, I think.
Sorry.
Okay.
Never mind.
And at this ABKA conference, they asked me to speak, and that's what I talked about was, well, it was probably 2006 or 2007, because I think the title of my talk was 10 years in the industry and how it's changed, and talked about nutrition and training and all of that, and really, really talked up positive training. It got pretty good response there, and then did the Canadian APDT had me come in, and I did the same thing up there too. But yeah, change is coming. It's not coming as fast as we would all like, but we're getting there. And folks like us are hanging in there and
fighting the good fight.
Fighting the good fight. So, and it's ultimately what most people want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a segment of the population that wants to have a dog and doesn't want to spend any time building a relationship and training it.
Right.
And unfortunately, those are the people that are still going to gravitate towards some of these other.
Right.
Yeah. And they're not neutering or spaying their dogs. So they're not training them, not socializing them, not fixing them. And
they're making more dogs.
And they're the ones that are, it's like that's another big change that we've seen in the industry for us, is that the responsible dog owners who are socializing and training with positive methods and spaying and neutering their pets, and those dogs aren't being reproduced, and the dogs that are, left to the backyards or accidental breedings, and those are the ones that are filling up the shelters, and so those are the dogs that are getting adopted, and
so we're seeing larger numbers of difficult dogs coming in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And
more opportunity for
the breeders, the folks that are breeding, not all of them, but a large number of them don't care about positive training at all. No. And even many of the shelters and rescues, it's more about, and I hate to use this word, but this is exactly what it is, moving product.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we don't care how you train them.
Or they can only get free training from an aversive trainer.
Yeah.
She's offering it for free, so they can't say no.
Yeah.
And there's no, positive trainers that are offering to volunteer their time.
Well, and we're a no-kill city, so like there's a lot of dogs that are, I don't want to say beyond help,
but really in need of help. Mm-hmm.
But they're moving product that should not be put out.
No, I know where you guys are on no kill, but I think no kill has not been helpful either, because there are some dogs that are so emotionally damaged that it's inhumane to keep them alive.
Yeah, you would have to have a professional trainer to own them and to work them
and only have that dog
all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
there's too many dogs.
It's just and sadly, I occasionally have clients that see dogs and they feel sorry for them, and they tell me the story, and I said, you haven't adopted it yet, have you? And they said, well, no, but this dog needs someone so bad. And it's like, there are lots of dogs that don't need that level of help. Is that what you're really signing on for? Because I could help you find a dog that I think you're not going to have to do as much work with.
Right.
Yeah, you're looking.
And they said, well, would you adopt this dog? And it's like, no way.
No.
Yeah.
I've had a couple intentionally and a couple of accidentally that required a huge investment of energy that way, and it's not something I would sign on for.
Right. Right.
I feel bad for them, but the last dog we got, I made it clear that I want a dog I can come home to at night and isn't going to be a project.
Right.
Yeah.
I work with projects. I don't want to live with another project.
You want to come home to a home. You're like, he ate the couch again, or he tore the front door off, or ripped the carpet at the front door.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, it's sadly, it's part of the reason that we've been successful is there's people that are trapped, they're prisoners because of their dog, and they can't go somewhere. And they find out that, our staff is fairly well trained in animal behavior. And so we can take those difficult dogs that might be human aggressive or dog aggressive, and basically have a place where they're safe and comfortable, and the owners can get away for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it is become a big problem.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to give our listeners a chance to find out if they want to know more about all your passions related to positive training and the Shock Free Coalition. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and your blog, because I'd love for that to be part of the show today.
Okay. Well, my blog is wordswoofsandmeows.com or words-woofs-meows.com. And they can also go to the Green Acres Kennel .com website and find the blog button as well, or greenacreskennelshop.com. And the radio show and podcast is called The Woof Meow Show. And we're in our
I love that.
15th year, I think.
That is amazing.
And it's been a podcast probably for the past 5 or 7 that I've got serious about uploading the podcasts and getting them out there. It's a recorded show, and it's myself and our former operations manager. Kate was the kennel manager when we bought this place, so she's been here a long time. She's a good friend. She's basically a sister to me at this point, and so we've been doing this together, and we kind of know how each other think. And sometimes it's a show where we're just having a conversation about articles we've read in the news or research studies we've read. Sometimes we have guests on. We've had vets from all over the country. When I was in England, I interviewed some folks from the Dogs Trust, and we did a show that was devoted to them, which was pretty cool. Sometimes I'll have other PPG people on, but we're kind of all over the map. We talk a lot about training and behavior, nutrition, and complementary healthcare, because those are real big interests of ours. And, it kind of all goes back to Gus, that puppy I told you about when we started. It was due to his behavioral quirks, his training quirks, his healthcare quirks that really pushed Paula and I to start learning about all of this stuff.
Yep.
If we had picked a different puppy, I think it's entirely possible this wouldn't have happened. He was really the catalyst for it.
Yeah. Sounds familiar, huh?
Yeah, I have like almost an identical story to yours. We had a dog. We were gonna get married, and
it was our very first dog.
First
as a
dog
couple.
together, and she was a great little dog, but she didn't like other female dogs. And I had a trainer, tell me to alpha roll that bitch, and you tell her. And she bit me. It's still really emotional for me, and it was
25 years
over
ago,
25 years ago, and I have a picture of her that we had taken, and we have a stock tank, and so I was down in the tank and she was up above. Anyways, the picture, she's kind of looking down, and so we have that picture of her in our training building looking down on the people that are in the building, in the class. And so it's like everything I've done, it is sort of I'm sorry to her, but like it really altered who she was, because there was a trainer frothing at the mouth, screaming at me to basically hurt my dog, like giving me.
Sounds so similar.
Isn't it crazy?
Yeah. And the crazy thing is they're implicitly giving people permission to hurt their dogs in the name of training, and it's not training. And I think people that don't have timing or don't understand operant conditioning or classical conditioning and can't actually train the dog, they get frustrated, they get angry, and they have this tool that has been given to them that they abuse. And so it's, it just goes rapidly downhill without building a relationship.
That's what makes shock collars so dangerous, because you can do that with the press of a button.
Yeah.
And they say, it's a vibration, and you're like, not for long.
Well, and they say, I push a button and the dog comes. I push a button and the dog sits. It's like, for me, I always say to people, have you ever been shocked? Like, have you ever unplugged a hairdryer or a vacuum cleaner or touched an electric fence? And just about everybody says, oh yeah. and they have this flashback moment of, I can tell you exactly where I was, how old I was, what room I was in, the way it made me feel, what I thought and felt right after that. And I'm like, it's the same thing for dogs, but they do not have the brain that you have that can put it all together. To them, it's just this random thing that happened, and all they remember is how much it hurt and how much confusion, and it's really criminal. I feel like it's criminal.
It is, and one shock can really mess up a dog for life.
Yeah.
There's an article Dan Antelek wrote on for PPG. It's a story about Charlie. And if you go to my blog and you type in Charlie, but spell it with Lee, it'll come right up, because I've shared it there and we did a podcast about it. But is a really telling story, because the dog blew through the underground fence the first night, got shocked, and was in the middle of a boulevard just trembling and not knowing what to do after that. And then the dog started getting shocked in its own home due to malfunctions in the collar, and it just escalated and got worse and worse. And the people who went down this path had no idea they were hurting their dog.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, nobody, I don't think anybody talks to a trainer expecting they're going to recommend something that would hurt.
Right.
And when they found out it did, they were aghast. They found Dan, and he was able to work with them and, you know, to really help this dog. But it talks about all of how the dog just became more anxious about everything.
Yeah.
And it's a real good one to share if you're trying to change people's minds. If they take the time to read it, they may think about it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as I read your bio, we have had trainers in the past that were PPG members, but as soon as I read your bio, I joined PPG as a business owner. And then from there, the links, also your links led me to the Shock Free Coalition, which we also signed up for. So I had never even heard of it before. And we've been promoting positive training since we opened. So I was thrilled to see how much you've done for positive training, and that we could still be a part of, you know, joining the solution, you know, above and beyond what we're already trying to do just right here in Austin. So,
well, and PPG is a great resource. They've got great articles. They've got a really wonderful journal. One of the things the Shock Free Coalition will be doing, we were going to do it this year, and then COVID.
Right.
So literally a week before COVID, we had all of this stuff in place to launch this major pledge drive. And then it's like, oh, we've got to rethink this. This just isn't the time to do this. Everybody's brain is everywhere.
Yeah.
Alphas. And this is where before I realized how much it was going to change my life and occupy my time. But we've got that scheduled for March 1st through May 31st of next year. So watch that shockfree.org space, because you're going to be seeing some stuff where we want people to get involved in recruiting clients, recruiting other pet care professionals, because that's what it's going to take. There's the more of us there that are out here saying this is the way to do it, the more people are going to follow along.
That's wonderful.
There's some big money behind the dog training place. I don't want to say the name of the company, but
if they're in Texas, I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, the ones that have sold their very own shock collar.
Yeah, they get really upset. Like anytime that we've ever said anything on TV or in print, or we've run into them at events, and we had a training manager who was very outspoken, and she was going up to them and challenging them, and, you know, talking to them about philosophies, and, you know, telling them that you will take the collar off and let's see how well behaved they are. And it's hard when there's money behind it that sponsors, you know, news stations or
big events
or magazines, or, you know, like we've had somebody not run something because we were speaking out against a group.
Yeah, a local vet they wanted us to write articles for their customers for their newsletter,
but they didn't want us to say anything about.
Yeah, they didn't want us
aversives,
talking negatively about aversive training, and I was like, I guess we're not writing for you then.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, and it's sad, but the veterinary community needs to get responsible and come around too. Are you guys familiar with the AAHA behavior management guidelines?
No.
Okay, so these were published in 2015 by the American Animal Hospital Association. And they say in very clear, unequivocal language that no aversive should ever be used on a dog for training, for management, for care, for anything.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
Now, the problem with the guidelines, because a couple of years ago at PPG, I was at a table with Karen Overall and Elena Reisner, and I asked both of them, I said, these guidelines are great, but does an AAHA accredited clinic obligated to comply with them? And Dr. Overall said,
nope.
I don't know. That's a good question. Let me check. She emailed back about a week later and said, damn, no. So it is a little bit of an out. And my vet, who I love dearly, and I've tried to get him to support the Shock Free Coalition, and is afraid to do so because he has members of his staff who use invisible fence products at home, and he's worried about how his clients are going to react. And I know how he feels, but they feel their business is going to be threatened. And on one hand, I understand that, but on the other hand, that's not something I'm going to choose to do.
Yeah.
And, I was leading the fight about over-vaccination long before the veterinary community on board was, and boy, some of the nasty letters I got over that and about nutrition. But I'm going to do what I think is right, and
that's great.
That's just who I am.
That's why you are where you are.
That's right. That's why you have so many accolades and awards, and I'm so proud of the work that you're doing, and we are honored to be, in your
thank you
today.
Thank you for talking to us.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us today, Don.
It's been a pleasure, and we'll have to reverse this, and I'll have to have you on the Woof Meow Show at some point in the future.
We would absolutely love it.
I want to ask you, I got a quick speed round questions for you. I got 3 questions that we ask all of our guests. The first question is, when is your first memory of dogs?
My very first memory of dogs, I was probably about 4 or 5. My parents had very, very good friends who owned a resort in northern Wisconsin, and she also groomed and bred and showed standard poodles. And she had a dog named Desiree that became my best buddy. We only saw each other once every summer, but I've got a picture somewhere I've put up with Desiree and I when we were about 5 sitting there together. That was my first dog experience, and I was smitten.
Aren't they awesome?
And the rest is history.
My first memory of fun and play was with a dog. Like the very first time that I remember, I'm having fun and I'm playing, and it was with our family Afghan.
Okay.
So cool.
Okay, second question. How many dogs have you had in your lifetime? And this includes dogs your parents might have had when you were a kid.
We had no dogs when I was a kid. My parents, after that episode with Desiree one summer, on the way back, we ran into some people at a rest stop driving home who had found this Cocker Spaniel. It ended up ours. It was our dog for 3 days, and then my parents, who both worked, decided this was the dumbest decision we ever made.
Aw.
And so I lost that dog. So I don't really count that one. But I had Trivia, who was my very first dog. My parents finally relented when I was a junior in high school. I don't know what they were thinking, because you know whose dog that became for several years.
Yeah.
But I had Trivia, and then we added my wife's English Springer Spaniel Prince to the family when we got married. Then we had Gus, then we had Shed, then we had Queenie, another inherited dog. Then we rescued one of our clients' dogs, a Pekingese. We had another Cairn Terrier named Dulcie. We had our Golden Ticken, and then we had Muppy. So whatever that totals
That's a 9
totals
right
up
there.
to.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So
Very
those were
nice.
those were all of the dogs.
Puppy, that's a great dog name.
So that's a lot of dogs and a lot of time. We all know that dogs aren't always fun to own. What is your biggest oh no moment? Like something your dog did, or something that happened, or something you can laugh about now? But
I think the biggest oh no moment was that first night at puppy class with Gus. And I didn't realize that until later. I mean, right away, I felt like an absolute jerk.
Yeah, I get it.
But I didn't realize how profound a moment that was, and how it literally was going to change my life.
Yeah.
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 And that was really probably the most profound moment. Oh, there was a wolf cross Malamute we had for a few months named Sandy too.
Oh, there's 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always say your worst days often turn out to be your best days. You just don't know it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So, like, I think that was probably like perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like you guys
It really was, and it's interesting. I write a column for our state doggy newspaper, and my column was due yesterday, and I had something in the works, but I knew I was going to need more time, and I said I got to come up with something else to write. And so I wrote a column, Reflections on 25 Years of Being a Pet Care Professional, and I started with that piece about Gus, because he really was the one that started so much of this. And there's not a presentation I don't end where I say this is in memory of Gus, because he started it all.
I love it.
And I can see you're a little teary about it. I get it. Like I can hardly talk about Chelsea and what I did without breaking down.
Yeah.
Like, it's upsetting.
Yeah, I think a lot of positive trainers come from that negative experience. I mean, that it's a real eye opener when something like that happens.
Yep.
Well, thank you very, very, very much for joining us today. It's been great.
Thankfully, there's people in the world like you and Don that are making the world a better place for dogs.
Trying. That's my mission.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and let's keep working on this mission together. And you were talking about 76 degrees before we started. We had a whopping 60 here today, which I'm excited about. This is my kind of weather.
That's glorious.
We just got our very, very first hint of false fall.
Yeah.
Which is, we had like highs in the low 80s and lows in the
60s.
upper 60s, but it'll bounce back. It'll go back up to 90s again, but we are in the downslide. I don't like the Texas summers anymore.
Well, thank you for joining us, Don, and I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Sounds good. You guys have a great day.
Thanks
Great
for being on
weekend
the show
too.
Today.
Bye.